Eighth graders, how you doing? Welcome back. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. This week is going to be a little bit kooky. Not our standard practice of what we have done in the past few weeks. I'll be explaining more in subsequent videos. We're going to be doing an activity called a question formulation technique as a way of wrapping up our whole unit on the amendments to the Constitution. But since we've had vocabulary relating to the amendments the past 2 weeks, I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to have my annual vocabulary review of all of the current office holders of key figures of the federal, state, and local governments. Always a great time, lots of fun. I know you're excited. Let's get into it. First figure we're going to talk about is the POTUS. Here's your notice. The President of the United States, Donald John Trump. As President of the United States, Mr. Trump serves as our highest elected official, head of the executive branch of the federal government, is the commander-in-chief of our armed forces, the chief executive, and head of state. All those jobs that we talked about when we did the executive branch. President Trump, before running for office, was a businessman and a reality TV star. Next, we have Vice President. Vice President of the United States currently is Michael Pence, but he's known as Mike to his friends. Mike Pence is second in line to the presidency. In the line of succession, the Vice President's number one job is to remain number two unless he has to become number one in the event that the president is incapacitated, resigned, retired, or dead. He also serves as the president of the U.S. Senate, meaning that he is the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So since the Senate has an even number, literally 100, if it's a 50-50 margin, Vice President Pence becomes a voting member of the Senate and breaks the tie. Before running for office with President Trump, Vice President Pence served as the governor of Indiana and was a member of the House of Representatives for many years. Next, we got Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo is the current U.S. Secretary of State. Now, you might be confused by the picture because it says Central Intelligence Agency behind him. That's because before he was Secretary of State, he was also the head of the CIA. How about that? That's some great experience getting ready for being the person that oversees U.S. diplomacy and international relations. It says, if confirmed by the Senate, I should have updated that. Oops. He was confirmed. He's been there for a while. He replaced Rex Tillerson, President Trump's first Secretary of State. But he's there definitely for the duration. Let's get now, the Secretary of State is often seen as the highest ranking member of the cabinet, since they are first in line of succession of cabinet members in the event that the president needs to be replaced. Next, let's go to Mark Esper. Mark Esper is our current Secretary of Defense, as evidenced by that large eagle behind him. He coordinates the actions of all of the armed forces. He works in the Pentagon in Virginia. He helps coordinate the president's policy militarily in times of peace and times of war. He is the highest ranking civilian official under the president in the U.S. military. He had a good deal of military background, serving as an officer in the U.S. Army and was also a cadet at West Point. He then went on to serve as a lobbyist and a contractor for the defense industry. So he has lots of defense background. William Barr is our next member of the cabinet who is up, and he obviously had to pass the bar. See, the bar examination is the test that you have to take to become an attorney, and he would have to be an attorney to be the U.S. Attorney General, right? Right? Anyway, as U.S. Attorney General, he is the top cop under the president. They are in charge of coordinating the Justice Department. Many different law enforcement agencies of the federal government all fall under the umbrella of Secretary Barr. He is the nation's top prosecutor. He is in charge of, making sure that we're enforcing federal laws dealing with crime, whether it is the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, whether it's the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration. All these fall under the supervision of Secretary Barr. Now, he had a great deal of experience preparing him for being U.S. Attorney General, namely that he used to be the U.S. Attorney General under President Bush, the first President Bush, Bush 41. He was served as Attorney General at one point in that administration. So that's definitely good prep for serving it later. Our next fella is Steve Mnuchin. That, by reading it and not hearing it pronounced, is usually tough to pronounce. Steve Mnuchin is the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. That means that if you think treasure, he's in charge of our economic activity. He's in charge of all of our financial agenda for the president and helps coordinate all of President Trump's economic policies. The Treasury Department oversees the Bureau of Engraving that prints our money. They oversee the Federal Reserve, many different things. If it deals with money, it goes under the auspice of Secretary Mnuchin. Before serving in President Trump's administration, Mr. Mnuchin was a CEO at Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful and influential stock brokering companies in the world. Keep in mind Goldman Sachs. We're going to hear about them later. Well, we got a good amount of the people from the executive branch. We're not going to go into every member of the cabinet. That would be exhausting. But let's get into the judicial branch. Here we see Chief Justice John Roberts, and he oversees and sets the agenda for the U.S. Supreme Court. You might remember when we did the judicial branch. He's a face that you might see for some time. As a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, their term is for life, meaning they serve until they are rid of, R-I-D, resign, impeach, or die. In his early 60s in good health, Mr. Roberts likely will be serving for a very long time on that bench as the most powerful member of the most powerful court in the country. Now, he's the only one that's going to show up on your vocab quiz, but just for fun, here is all 9 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court. You can see Chief Justice Roberts sitting in the middle because he's the chief. He gets to sit, right in the middle. Then we have Justice Stephen Breyer, who is appointed by Bill Clinton. Clarence Thomas, our longest-serving member of the U.S. Supreme Court, who is appointed by Bush 41. Then we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG, who was appointed by President Clinton, is our longest-serving woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. Currently, we have Samuel Alito, who was appointed by the second President Bush, Bush 43. He also is from New Jersey, representing. Then we have President Trump's first appointment, Neil Gorsuch, right here, number 6, a tall guy on this side. Next to him is one of President Obama's appointments. That is Sonia Sotomayor. She is also the first Latina to serve in the U.S. Supreme Court. Next to her is Elena Kagan, another appointment by President Obama. And then the newest Supreme Court Justice, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was also appointed by President Trump. That's a judicial branch. Now let's get into the legislative. All right, here's our first elected Democrat that we have in our whole panel of folks representing our government, and that is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is the highest-ranking woman in the federal government. She is third in line to the presidency and moderates and controls the debate and controls the agenda of the House of Representatives. When you have that job, you get to have a great big gavel, and they call you the Speaker of the House. So she is the most powerful office holder in the U.S. Congress. Next to her would be the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. Senator McConnell sets the agenda, moderates the debate of the U.S. Senate. Pretty much the same job, but in the Senate. One of the things that makes the Speaker a little bit more powerful than the Senate Majority Leader is that she's in the line of succession to the presidency, whereas Senator McConnell is not. However, this guy is Chuck Grassley. He is the U.S. Senate President pro temp. The pro tempore is more of an honorary position. You're fourth in line to the presidency. You're the technical leader of the Senate, but it's really the Senate Majority Leader that sets everything. And the Senate pro temp is more of an honorary position for the longest serving member of the party that's in the majority controlling the Senate. So right now, there's more Republicans, so they get to choose the Senate President pro temp, and that's why it's Chuck Grassley from Nebraska. Next, let's get into the House of Representatives and look at who represents you in the House, and that is Congressman Bill Pascrell. Bill Pascrell represents New Jersey's 9th District in the lower chamber of the Congress, which is the House of Representatives. Before serving in the House of Representatives, Congressman Pascrell was a teacher. He also served as a mayor in Paterson, and then went on in the late 90s to run for Congress, where he has been ever since. Then let's get into the U.S. Senate, the upper chamber. Who represents you there? The senior U.S. Senator from New Jersey is Robert Menendez from Hudson County. He represents New Jersey in the upper chamber. He's one of the 2 U.S. Senators from New Jersey. The other one being Cory Booker, the junior senator from New Jersey, who ran for president, but tapped out in the presidential primaries, really before the primaries got going. He is definitely quite a big figure in the Senate lately. And he is a former mayor of Newark, New Jersey, New Jersey's largest city. Now let's get to our state government. Leader of our state executive branch is Phil Murphy. Governor Murphy worked in business as a CEO of Goldman Sachs. Apparently, if you want to run for office, having Goldman Sachs on your resume definitely helps. He also served as an ambassador to Germany under President Obama. And last but not least, your local government is headed by Mayor Denis Vacarro, who is the head over official who sees the legislative branch of your local government in Moonachie. In Moonachie, you have a strong council, weak mayor. So the mayor acts as setting the agenda and is a tie-breaking vote. But a lot of the executive function is done by your borough administrator. So that is all of the figures of your government. I am not going to give you a question at the end of this. I'm just going to ask you underneath in the comments to write, I watched it, and write the name of one person who you didn't know that they held that office and something you learned about them. There you go. I am giving you a question. Just got to get some proof that you watched the video. Then you should work on the vocabulary cards. That is going to be your assignment for today. Just work on making your own set of cards. You can use the pictures I put up, or you can find your own, which I think would be a lot more fun, and make your own study cards. And then tomorrow we're going to be getting into the QFT, question formulation technique, which I'll explain in the video tomorrow. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful Monday.